This unlucky guy gets hit by a truck and dies, only to wake up in a dangerous isekai world filled with destruction and magic. At first, he thinks he's just an ordinary person, but deep down, he possesses a hidden trait that makes him completely immortal. On top of that, an unusual power lies dormant within him, one that won't activate on its own. Surrounded by the dangerous beasts roaming this world, he will have to endure rigorous training. The story begins in a medieval-style isekai world, where a high schooler named Ryu is lying on the floor of a quiet, empty cottage. He steps outside to breathe in the fresh air and sees nothing but towering mountains as far as the eye can see. Staring at his hands, he whispers, "Waters, come forth." Instantly, a small ball of water forms in the air and splashes lightly onto his palm. This all began a few days ago when Ryu woke up in a strange white void. No walls, no floor, just an endless empty space. Before he could panic, a calm voice echoed and an angel appeared before him. Reading his mind like an open book, the angel reassured him. The angel looked exactly like him, but explains that no one had passed through this place in years. Then came the bad news. Ryu was dead, struck down by none other than the legendary Truck Kun. He accepted this fact with a strange calmness, as if he already knew what the next step would be: reincarnation. In his mind, he named the angel Michael and asked what he should do in his next life. With a wide smile, Michael replied, "Live however you want. Live life on your own terms." Ryu had always dreamed of living a slow, quiet life, and once he got the green light, he was ready to be reborn into Fee, a world filled with magic. Michael gave him a brief introduction to this world. In Fee, only 20% of the population can use magic, and Ryu is one of them, boasting the strongest compatibility with the water element. Since he asked for peace, Michael provided him with a small, secluded cottage in a forest. He stocked a nearby ice house with 2 months' worth of food and left 2 books in the cottage, one about plants and the other about monster magic. He explained that it was all about imagination and training. No cheats, no complicated rules. For now, there was no danger because Michael had placed a barrier to keep the forest monsters away. Back in the present, he tries his water magic again. With a little focus, he creates a floating ball of water. No chants were needed. That's the perk of being immortal. He fills his bathtub with water, but it's freezing cold. He needs to heat it up, and for some odd reason, he tries the oldest method known to man, rubbing sticks together to start a fire. After scrubbing for a long time, he gets exhausted. Then an idea strikes him. Why not use magic in a smarter way? Recalling his chemistry lessons, he tries to separate hydrogen and oxygen, but instead of heat, the water gets even colder and turns into ice. Now that he has a block of ice, he uses it like a magnifying glass to focus the sunlight, and surprisingly, a fire ignites. Once the fire is going, he heats the water and sinks into the tub as if it were his ultimate life goal. As he relaxes, clarity returns, and he realizes he could have just used magic to heat the water directly. But that's an experiment for later. For now, it's dinner time. While eating, he realizes the food in the ice house won't last forever. He'll have to start hunting soon or things will get difficult. However, the thought of entering the forest terrifies him because of the monsters lurking there. He knows he won't survive with just the small knife Michael gave him. It was time to learn how to fight using magic. The next morning, he tries his first offensive spell, but when he attacks a tree, it has no effect. He then decides to change its shape, molding it into a sharp arrow. After hours of practice, he manages to create a basic water jet, but it still barely leaves a scratch on the tree. The next day, he tries ice magic, hoping it will be more damaging. He creates an ice crystal, but moving it is difficult. It's not as fluid as water. After a full day of hard work, he manages to summon several crystals and keep them suspended in the air, but he can't seem to launch them at his target. After many attempts and failures, he finally reaches a point where he can create ice crystals rapidly, but the power is still lacking, not enough for a real fight. Since time was running out, he shapes a crystal into a spear and heads towards the forest. Near the riverbank, he spots something. He thinks to himself that if his wood supply runs out, he'll need a backup to start a fire. While gathering wood, a wild boar spots him and charges straight ahead. Ryu freezes in fear. It feels like his second life is about to end right here. But the fear of death actually excites him, and he dodges by jumping to the side. Quickly, he turns the ground into ice. The boar slips and falls. In that split second, he drops sharp ice crystals from above. One strong hit, and the boar is down. But there was still a long journey ahead. Returning to the cabin, he checks the monster book. Looking at the entry for the boar, he realizes it was just a weak category. This realization shakes Ryu's confidence. He looks at the next page and thinks, if weak monsters almost killed me, what will the strong ones do? Then comes the entry for the dragons. The book bluntly states, if you ever see a dragon, run. It's useless, but run anyway. Then he turns to the page for the mother, and it was even more terrifying. It said, there is no need to run, just pray that it never appears before you. It was soul-crushing knowledge, but Ryu decides he won't back down. The next morning, he sets out again. At first, everything is fine. He finds a fruit tree, takes a bite, and it's so delicious that he forgets all yesterday's stress. But this peace doesn't last long. Suddenly, an assassin hack attacks him and knocks him to the ground. Ryu realizes he stands no chance against this bird. The hack possesses invisible air magic, making its attacks nearly impossible to dodge. He remembers a trick from the monster book and starts running, but who can outrun a flying hack? He stops to fight. His direct attack causes the hack to crash. He thinks it's over, but as the hack emerges from the impact, Ryu realizes he's been injured. One of his eyes is damaged. Perhaps because of this, the hack retreats and flies away, leaving Ryu to collapse on the ground. He mutters, "This quiet life isn't quiet at all." On his way back, he gets lost. While wandering through the forest, he sees something creepy, a headless knight. A Dullahan. Smoke rises from his neck like a chain smoker, and it is calmly cleaning its horse. Somehow, Ryu makes it back to the cottage. Days pass and he continues to train. He fights random monsters, catches fish, and refines his water magic until it's sharp enough to cut through mountains. He was finally beginning to understand this world. Every night, he returns to the place where the Dullahan stays, not to fight, but perhaps to grow. There was no mention of a Dullahan in the monster book. Either it wasn't a monster, or it was so rare that it wasn't mentioned for beginners. After another tough day, Ryu realized he doesn't just go there to prove himself. He feels as though the Dullahan has been trying to make him stronger this whole time. That night, the strange knight fashions a sword of night ice and hands it to Ryu without a word. Ryu stares for a moment, understands the gesture, and takes the sword. As soon as he grabs it, the knight turns around and vanishes into thin air. A few more days pass by until that damned hack appears once again while Ryu is in the middle of his training. As Ryu is training, he suddenly sees a familiar figure hovering in the air. He gasps, immediately realizing it's the same hawk he fought before. But this time, something is different. It wasn't black before, and its size has significantly increased. It's clear, the monster has evolved. The hawk charges with intense ferocity. Ryu quickly constructs a 5-layer ice wall, but the hawk shatters it instantly without slowing down. He tries creating a chain of walls, but the result is the same. Ryu launches ice spears, but the hawk flies straight through them. His walking stick is knocked out of his hand, but he quickly draws the ice sword given to him by the Dullahan. He swings it with all his might, and this time it connects. The hawk recoils, but attacks again. Ryu doesn't hesitate. He thrusts the blade deep into the creature. The hawk crashes to the ground. Ryu approaches it slowly, feeling a sense of respect. He realizes the hawk didn't just come here to kill. Even after losing its eye in the previous fight, it kept pushing. It was the factor that forced Ryu to become stronger. In a way, he feels grateful because the hawk evolved specifically to face him. With a heavy heart, he delivers the final blow to end its suffering. Soon after, he discovers that a dragon has been watching him from a distance. When the dragon approaches and speaks, Ryu is stunned. He can actually understand its voice. The dragon seems relaxed, using what feels like telepathy. It asks Ryu if he has seen an evolved hawk. Ryu admits he killed it. Intrigued, the dragon looks at the ice sword. It immediately recognizes it. That is the king's sword. Ryu is even more confused now. The dragon asks what he could have possibly done to earn such a legendary blade. Ryu has no answer. He's completely in the dark. After satisfying its curiosity, Ryu asks the dragon a few questions of his own. They talk for a long time before the dragon announces it must leave. Before flying away, it introduces itself. "My name is Lund." Ryu's life in this new world was going quite smoothly, so smoothly that he decides to check the status sleep the angel gave him during reincarnation. When re-examining it, he realized he had missed an important detail. Ryu was bonded with a hidden feature, eternal youth, the power to remain young forever. Later, Ryu gets a craving for seafood and heads toward the beach. There, he discovers a shipwreck. Near the wreckage, he finds a body, but the man is already dead. Suddenly, he hears a groan. Ryu's eyes light up. For the first time, he has found another human in this world. The survivor is a young man named Abel. Abel is trapped in a recurring nightmare, remembering how a giant octopus-like creature attacked their ship during a storm. When he finally opens his eyes, he finds himself inside Ryu's cottage. Confused and disoriented, he jumps up to look for the others, but his confusion only grows. This place looks nothing like the world he knows. At that moment, Ryu walks in from behind. Abel is shocked, not only because he couldn't sense Ryu's presence, but Ryu's clothing style is completely alien to him. However, he remains polite and thanks Ryu for saving him. Ryu solemnly informs him that he was the only one he could save. Everyone else had perished. Abel takes the news surprisingly well, mentioning they were all smugglers anyway. Suddenly, Abel's stomach growls. Ryu suggests they talk over a meal. While eating, Abel finally asks about Ryu's strange clothes. Ryu explains those are the only clothes he has and that he has no way to make more. Abel suggests buying new ones, but then stops himself, realizing Ryu probably has no money. Ryu explains there are no people around to buy anything from. Curious, Abel asks how he hunts their food. Ryu demonstrates a bit of his water magic and says he mostly uses that. Abel is stunned. He mentions that in his experience, nearly half the people in the world can use magic. This shocks Ryu because Michael the angel told him only 20% of the population were magic users. Realizing there is a discrepancy in what he was told, Ryu tells Abel he needs to check something at the beach. The two of them head out together. On their way, Abel says if we run into any trouble, I'll handle the front lines. Ryu tells him it's not necessary, but Abel insists. I don't want to be the kind of guy who constantly needs saving. Ryu nods and agrees. Back at the beach, they notice the bodies had disappeared. Abel suggests either the tide or monsters took them. He thanks Ryu once more, realizing without him, he would have been among the dead. Now, Ryu has a decision to make. Abel tells him that the storm blew them far to the south, and he has no idea which way to go. He looks at Ryu and asks, would you like to come with me? Abel explains he needs Ryu's help to find the way, and once they reach civilization, he promises to help Ryu find a good job. Ryu thinks it over and agrees to be Abel's guide. That evening, Ryu stands by the garden he spent so much time building. There's a faint trace of sadness in his eyes at the thought of leaving it all behind. That night, he tells Abel he's going out to say goodbye to someone. Abel is curious but doesn't pry. At the lake, the Delahan is waiting. I'm leaving this forest for a long time, Ryu tells him. Thank you for the training. Tonight, I'm giving it everything I've got. Ryu draws his knife and the Delahan draws his sword. The battle begins. It's a brutal, high-intensity exchange. Eventually, Ryu collapses from exhaustion. The Delahan quietly starts walking back to the lake. Suddenly, he reaches into the water and pulls out a set of magical armor, handing it to Ryu as a parting gift. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ryu thanks him and heads back. The next morning, Ryu and Abel are ready to hit the road. As they leave, Ryu feels a pang of nostalgia looking back at the forest. Before they get far, a wild boar appears. Abel says, I've got this, and lunges at the beast. With a devastating move, he turns the boar into a meat donut. Ryu is stunned. What was that? He asks. Abel explains it's a genuine combat skill, something he spent nights practicing. Continuing their journey the next morning, they spot a group of lizard men. Abel warns him not to engage because they are incredibly powerful, so they try to change their route. However, Ryu realizes they're being followed. He prepares to fight, noting since they're outnumbered, he'll have to use magic. Abel wonders what Ryu can do with just a staff, only to be shocked when Ryu launches 4 icicle spears simultaneously. Half the enemies are wiped out instantly. After the fight, a bewildered Abel asks, was that a spell? Ryu casually replies that it was just a normal attack. Abel is floored. Most mages can only manifest 1 spell at a time, but Ryu summoned 4. Ryu brushes it off, suggesting his water magic system might just be different. Later, Ryu creates 2 ice cubes and fills them with water, which Abel finds odd, but Ryu just tells him he must have misheard. Along the path, Abel tosses a coin to Ryu. Ryu is genuinely excited. It's the first time he's ever seen money. Abel is shocked, realizing Ryu wasn't just broke, he was completely cut off from the rest of the world. Then Abel explains the 3 great nations, the Kingdom of Knightly, the Dohei Empire, and the Handel Federation. Ryu can't stop laughing when he hears the name Dohei, making fun of how ridiculous it sounds. Their laughter is cut short when they reach a clearing of large stones. Suddenly, a massive rock moves. Abel reacts instantly, slicing it in 2 pieces, while Ryu quickly creates a water shield to block a barrage of sharp stones. Abel explains they've stumbled right into a nest of rock golems. Ryu is confused. He thought golems would look more human-like. Abel doesn't have time to explain. He lunges at a golem and punches a hole through its center, but the golem doesn't go down. It instantly repairs itself and resumes the attack. Abel retreats, shouting that their physical attacks aren't having any effect. But Ryu has already come up with a plan. He summons a massive block of ice high in the air and slams it down on the golems. The entire group is flattened like pancakes. Abel stares, wide-eyed. "I've never even heard of a spell like that," he exclaims. Ryu nonchalantly drops a few more blocks until every golem is destroyed. As the dust settles, they find something inside the remains, a large glowing magic stone. Abel notes that it's extremely valuable. They managed to retrieve the magic stones from the other golems, though most were buried deep under the rubble. Ryu didn't bother melting the ice. He either didn't have the heart to do it or was simply feeling lazy. As they pressed on, they encountered a massive beast, a strange hybrid of a crocodile and a hippo. Abel identified it as a behemoth, a rare monster that people usually only hear about in legends. Ryu was actually in the mood for a fight, but Abel flatly refused. Crossing paths with the behemoth was nothing short of a suicide mission. In the midst of their standoff, a group of wyverns descended from the sky. They seemed excited for the chance to witness a monster versus monster showdown. They began pelting the behemoth with magic-charged stones. However, the behemoth let out a roar so powerful that it literally canceled out their spells. The wyverns crashed to the ground, stunned. Ryu realized that the beast must have used some kind of magic cancellation skill. That night, while they were eating, Abel brought the subject up again. "I've only ever heard of magic cancellation in dungeon traps," he said. Ryu was instantly intrigued. Abel revealed that there was a dungeon in the very place they were heading. Ryu's expression shifted, glaring at Abel as if he were keeping more secrets. Abel quickly changed the subject, asking if Ryu knew anything about dwarves and elves. Ryu told him to spill everything he knew. After a few more days of trekking, they reached a massive mountain range. Ryu noted that once they crossed these peaks, they would surely find a human settlement. Abel was taken aback. "How do you know that?" he asked. Ryu considered telling him about the dragon, but decided to stay vague. "Just some knowledge that ordinary people wouldn't understand," he said casually. Shortly after, a strange sound put them on full alert as a massive griffin swooped down from the clouds. Panic set in, but Ryu thought fast. He summoned a large slab of meat and tossed it into the air. Without a second thought, the griffin snatched the meat and flew away. Ryu knew that if the creature had attacked, they wouldn't have lasted a second. Abel remarked that legendary creatures like the behemoth and the griffin hadn't been seen for centuries. It seemed the mountains had kept them hidden from the human world. Ryu recalled that the wyverns they saw earlier had come from the north, meaning their nests were likely nearby. Sure enough, they soon stumbled upon a group of wyverns feasting on a carcass. Ryu wanted to engage, but Abel noted they looked like a professional scout group and might be too dangerous. Ryu asked, "If they can't fly, can you take them?" Abel confidently said he could. Then Ryu performed a dramatic fake chant and drove 4 icicles into the wyvern's wings, pinning them to the ground. Abel didn't miss the opportunity and moved in for the kill. When 2 more wyverns dropped, Ryu locked them down as well. Abel was becoming increasingly suspicious of Ryu's chants, but he chose to ignore it for the moment. After collecting the magic stones from all 3 wyverns, they continued north. Once they crossed the mountains, they arrived at a landscape of beautiful green hills. Abel was amazed. They had successfully taken down wyverns and amassed a small fortune in magic stones. "Once we reach the Empire, these will fetch a great price," Abel said. "By the way, where exactly are we going? Just please tell me it's not the Dohi Empire." Abel replied that Dohi was to the north. Ryu breathed a sigh of relief. Curious, Abel asked, "Is there some kind of problem?" Ryu remarks that the people aren't necessarily bad, they're just obsessively patriotic about their empire. Abel finds this reaction a bit strange. Soon, they come across a main road running east to west. Abel explains that those mountains were quite unique, acting as a natural barrier. When Ryu asks for more details, Abel avoids the topic and simply says the road leads to a town. Ryu gets excited. Finally, he'll get to sleep in a proper bed. Abel adds that the food of the town is also something worth trying. By nightfall, they reach the town and head straight to an inn for dinner. Abel brings up the Adventurers Guild, suggesting Ryu should join. He explains that a guild license acts as a status ID, which would even exempt him from the city entry tax. When Abel mentions he already paid Ryu's entry fee with a silver coin, Ryu gets slightly irritated. "Are you going to keep a tab on every single coin you spend on me?" he snaps. Abel looks a bit embarrassed, but quickly moves on to explain that the guild buys monster loot and magic stones, which are highly valued by alchemists. Just as Ryu is about to ask, the waitress brings their meal. Ryu is literally in shock. Before him sits a perfect Japanese curry. He had always thought isekai heroes had to spend years trying to recreate curry in a new world, yet here it was, ready to eat. He takes a bite. It tastes exactly like the curry back in Japan. Filled with nostalgia, he finishes the plate in seconds and immediately orders another. The next morning, Ryu can't stop talking about how amazing that curry was. Abel acts a bit weird about it. Ryu laughs and suggests they go get some sweets next, but Abel nervously claims he doesn't eat sweets and hurries ahead, leaving Ryu confused. Eventually, they reach the town of Lone, surrounded by vast golden wheat fields. At the gate, a guard named Nimmer is shocked to see Abel, who had been missing for months. Abel explains that things went south, but he only made it back because of Ryu. Nimmer shakes Ryu's hand in gratitude. Inside the city, Abel leads them toward the guild. He explains that while most people start at F rank, a solid recommendation can land someone directly into D rank. As they enter the guild, people swarm Abel like he's a returning hero. Ryu, happy for his friend, steps outside to get some fresh air. There, he bumps into an elf girl. Her stunning face and sharp ears immediately catch Ryu's attention. However, she's staring intently at Ryu's coat. She recognizes it as the Fairy King's coat and assumes Ryu must be someone of great importance to the Fairy King. Ryu has no idea what she's talking about. She mentions she's in a hurry, expresses hope that they'll meet again, and vanishes into the crowd, leaving Ryu standing there, completely baffled. Abel pulls Ryu back inside and proudly announces to the crowd, "This is the guy who saved my life." For the first time, Ryu finds himself the center of attention and realizes he actually doesn't mind it. Abel then takes Ryu to the front desk and asks the receptionist to register Ryu as a D-rank adventurer. Based on his personal recommendation, the receptionist freezes. Abel's squad has never recommended anyone. She explains that even with a recommendation, Ryu must prove his strength to earn the rank. Abel agrees, saying he'll speak with the guild master himself. After a short wait, the door swings open and the guild master makes a grand, dramatic entrance, looking completely fired up. Seeing that Abel has returned, the master is thrilled. Abel introduces Ryu and requests a D-rank exam for him. The master states firmly that no one gets a rank without a test. Abel is about to laugh it off, but his jaw drops when Abel dumps a heavy bag of high-grade magic stones onto the table. The sheer number of magic stones meant they hadn't just killed one or two wyverns, they had wiped out enough of them to potentially take down a kingdom. Abel calmly says, "Don't panic, they were all hunted south of the Malapik Mountains. The danger in that area is gone now." Ryu finds the name of the mountains interesting, Malapik. He figures the name must have a significant meaning, and the guildmaster's reaction confirms it. The master explains that those who attempt to cross the Malapik range never return, not even top-tier adventurers, unless there is a monumental reason. Hearing that Ryu and Abel survived that range was unbelievable to him. Without wasting another second, he approves Ryu's D-rank registration right then and there. Just then, Abel's old party bursts into the room and an emotional reunion begins. They had all convinced themselves that Abel would never come back. The master gives them space to catch up and leads Ryu outside to finalize the registration. As they walk, he tells Ryu that Abel's party, Crimson Sword, is one of the strongest and most famous groups in the guild. Ryu isn't too shocked, but he wonders if jumping straight to D rank might be a bit much. The master understands his concern and says, "I've known Abel for years. He doesn't lie. If he says you played a major role in those fights, that's enough for a D rank." He heads back to his office grumbling about paperwork, while a receptionist named Nina takes over to explain the basic rules. She informs Ryu that he can stay in the guild lodgings for the first 300 days, after which he'll have to find his own place. She also mentions that the guild runs a dungeon exploration course for new adventurers. Ryu signs up immediately. When she tells him to meet in the hall at 9 a.m. sharp in 2 days, Ryu is stunned. "You guys use clocks too? The time is so exact." Nina just smiles and continues. She shows Ryu a crystal device and asks him to place his hand on it. The crystal glows, performing a biometric scan, and transfers his data onto a metal plate. That small metal slab becomes his official guild card, serving as his status ID. Nina hands him the card and congratulates him on becoming an official member. As they leave the office, Abel is waiting. He wants to buy Ryu new clothes and perhaps a staff. Ryu is happy with the clothes but confused about the staff. Abel explains that a staff is standard for mages. Ryu shrugs and says, "I'm fine casting magic without one, and I have my sword for close combat." Abel looks at the small knife Ryu is pointing to and wonders, is this knife really a sword? What kind of guy is he? Ryu tells him that right now there's something more important than gear, knowledge about this world. Through his research, Ryu discovers that the time system, the months, and the days are exactly like Earth's. Even the metric system is the same. Ryu realizes this must be the influence of someone else from Earth who was reincarnated here before him. Later, Abel returns from the store after paying for the clothes and says, now the real fun begins. He takes Ryu to the party hall where the entire guild is celebrating Abel's safe return. Ryu and Abel spend the whole night partying hard. The next morning, Nina practically drags a hungover Ryu to his room. He'll be sharing it with two other rookie adventurers, Mills and Doctor. As soon as Nina leaves, Mills starts rambling about how amazing she is. Doctor tells him to get a grip, saying Nina is way out of his league. After a bit of talk about the guild lodgings, Nina returns, bringing in a brand new recruit. My name is Amin, the 16-year-old says, his voice trembling with nerves. He explains that since his parents are gone, he wants to become an adventurer to survive. Nina encourages the group to make him feel at home. Meanwhile, Abel is telling his party about Ryu's incredible feats, how he dodged attacks, used magic without a staff, and froze everything in sight. One of his teammates, Lin, isn't buying it. She uses logic, arguing that his range placement and casting rules go against the very laws of magic. Abel tries to convince her, mentioning how Ryu crushed golems with massive falling ice blocks. Lin dismisses it, stating that according to magical theory, such things are impossible. Another teammate, Atria, brings up an old legend about a man who could do similar things, the Inferno Mage. However, people only know him through myths. No one alive has actually seen him. Some of the members of the party start to get anxious. If this guy is that strong, what if he turns out to be an enemy? What if he joins the Empire? Abel immediately shuts them down. Relax, Ryu can't even stand the mention of the Dohei Empire. He'll never join them. Back in the room, Ryu is joking around with his new roommates. He reflects on how chaotic his life has become, but truthfully, he's starting to enjoy it. A few days later, Ryu and Amin, the new recruit, finish their dungeon speedrun boot camp. The instructor announces that this afternoon they'll head in to clear the first floor. Amin immediately goes into panic mode. This is his first real dungeon. Ryu tells him to stay calm, warning him that he'll be exhausted before they even step inside if he doesn't relax. When the instructor asks if anyone has questions, Ryu raises his hand. Can adventurers warp directly to floors they've already cleared? The instructor is stunned. That's a question usually asked by veteran dungeon crawlers, not rookies. He explains that while some dungeons in the south have warp points, the lone dungeon does not. There are no shortcuts here. He then leads the group towards the entrance, which is located right in the city center. He explains that the entire city was actually built around the dungeon. He also notes that every few years, the monster population inside the dungeon spikes, sometimes even reaching the surface. To ease their fears, he points out the massive walls surrounding the area, built to keep the citizens safe, and assures them there is currently no risk of a monster wave. Soon, they reach the beginner-friendly first floor, where no dangerous monsters roam. The instructor grants them permission for free exploration, provided they stay near the entrance. Ryu teams up with Amin. Moments later, Ryu senses something approaching. He tells Amin, get ready to attack. I'll pin it down and you strike. Amin nervously draws his sword. A monster emerges and Ryu recognizes it instantly. It's a soldier ant, just like the one he saw in his guidebook. He tells Amin to target the neck. With perfect timing, Ryu launches ice spears that pin the ant to the ground. Amin steps forward and delivers a clean slash, taking its head off. He's just secured his first ever kill. Amin is overwhelmed with joy, practically beaming with pride. Ryu calmly extracts the magic stone from the ant, a trophy of their first official dungeon victory. That evening, while having dinner with their roommates, they decide to have a small party to celebrate clearing the first floor. The roommates are incredibly impressed that Ryu and Amon managed to handle a soldier ant so early in their careers. Amon modestly tells them that he only landed the finishing blow. Ryu did all the heavy lifting by locking the monster in place. Amon is now so excited that he wants to go back to the dungeon tomorrow, though he admits the idea of going solo still terrifies him. Ryu tells him he'll tag along, as he also wants to explore down to the third floor. He notes that it was strange to see a first-floor monster wandering so far up, even though the instructor said such an occurrence is rare. Doctor adds that he has heard rumors of soldier ants appearing on the first and second floors more frequently lately. While the group is discussing this, Abel casually walks into the room and confirms that soldier ants have indeed started moving toward the upper floors. Mills and Doctor are stunned, realizing the town's #1 adventurer is standing right in front of them. Ryu greets him with his usual calm demeanor, completely unfazed by Abel's fame. Abel laughs and tells the roommates, "Keep an eye on Ryu. He's seriously lacking in common sense." Mills immediately jumps up and practically salutes. "I'm your biggest fan. My dream is to become a legendary adventurer like you." He begs for a handshake, and Abel obliges with a smile. "Follow your dreams," Abel says, "but remember, staying alive is your #1 priority." Ryu asks bluntly, "So what are you doing here?" Abel explains he just returned from a mission, but before he can finish his sentence, his entire party bursts into the room. The girls are clearly furious that Abel came to see Ryu before reporting to the guildmaster. Abel tries to explain that he was just giving tips to the new recruits, but Lin isn't having it. She tells the others to drag him to the master. She hauls him off while Abel protests like a child. As they leave, Lin shoots a sharp, jealous look at Ryu. Ryu, feeling the awkwardness, mutters, "What do you want?" Arya quickly intervenes, stopping Lin and politely apologizing to Ryu on behalf of the party. Once they leave, Mills goes back into fanboy mode, recounting legends of Abel and his crew. Ryu still doesn't understand why everyone is so obsessed with them. Meanwhile, Arya and Atreya are talking about Ryu. Arya scolds Lin for being rude in public, but admits she's also curious about him since Abel keeps raving about Ryu's magic. She wants to see what Ryu can really do in an actual fight. Ryu smiles to himself, knowing the opportunity will come soon enough. The next day, Ryu and Amon return to the dungeon. This time, they encounter a pack of monster dogs. Ryu freezes them all in place, and Amon shares off his skills by slicing through several of them with his sword. During a break, Ryu mentions that Amon's sword style reminds him of Abel. Amon explains that he learned to wield a blade from an elderly man who is trained at a famous swordsmanship academy in the capital. Hearing this, Ryu practically confirms that Abel must have attended the same academy. He sees genuine potential in Amon. If he keeps this up, he could become an incredibly strong swordsman. Amon, however, finds it strange that a magic like Ryu knows so much about the art of the sword. Ryu casually explains that he also trained with an instructor for a while and later evolved his own style through actual combat. Ryu notes that Amon's current style is physically demanding but very reliable. He just needs to work on his stamina. He recalls how during their journey, Abel would wake up before sunrise every morning to practice. Abel used to say that even those with talent go to waste if they don't work hard. Motivated, Amon vows to work even harder to become strong, and Ryu nods in approval. The next morning, Ryu heads to the library. He is stunned by its massive size. He asks the librarian for books on alchemy, and she leads him to a large shelf filled with beginner's manuals. Feeling a bit overwhelmed by the sheer number of books, Ryu decides to step outside for some fresh air. But as soon as he exits, everything goes dark. The entire city is plunged into darkness due to a total solar eclipse. Ryu looks up at the sky, unable to comprehend what is happening. Moments later, he feels something even stranger. Everyone around him has vanished. The city is deserted, filled with a haunting silence. Suddenly, a sharp sense of danger strikes him from behind. Driven by instinct, he turns and summons a massive ice barrier. A powerful fire blast slams into the barrier, causing a violent explosion. Ryu tries to figure figure out who would target him with such a lethal attack. That's when he sees her, walking toward him like a perfect villain from a Hollywood action movie. She is smiling with a chilled confidence, clearly enjoying the fact that a random human has wandered into her territory. It's obvious she plans to destroy him. Ryu immediately realizes she is a demon and perhaps the most powerful opponent he has faced in this world so far. For a split second, he considers running, but he quickly realizes escaping this dimension is impossible no matter how fast he runs. He grits his teeth and decides he has to fight. Ryu quickly summons multiple ice barriers. The demon launches another massive wave of fire. The barriers hold, but the demon shifts her strategy. She fires invisible wind bullets that easily tear through Ryu's ice. However, when they reach Ryu, they strike his cloak and dissipate without causing any harm. The demon is shocked. How did this human's cloak block my attack? Getting closer, she recognizes the garment and realizes he is no ordinary human. He is a mage wearing the Fairy King's robe. She decides that playing with magic is a waste of time and resolves to cut him down with her sword. Ryu knows that if she gets into close range, things could get ugly. He summons an ice sword and takes a defensive stance. The demon attacks with blinding speed. She is unnaturally fast, forcing Ryu to dodge constantly. One slash comes so close it grazes the air in front of his face. Clang, clang, ice shards fly as their blades clash at lightning speed. Seeing an opening, Ryu unleashes a hailstorm of ice spears, but the demon deflects every single one as if it were a mere warm-up. She is so immersed in the fight that she doesn't even notice the eclipse is ending. During the exchange, Ryu realizes she is using wind magic to boost her speed. She lunges in for what she thinks is a finishing blow, but Ryu easily deflects her attack once again. He realizes after the brutal sword training he received from the Dolahan, this demon's technique is actually far inferior. The demon is left in total shock. Who is this human who can use both high-level magic and a blade as so effectively? The demon lady grew even more furious. She realized that if the fight dragged on, Ryu could become a massive threat, so she decided to end it immediately. She shifted into a full offensive mode, turning it into a life or death struggle for Ryu. But Ryu didn't panic at all. He stayed perfectly calm, timing his attacks and using precise counters that kept the demon off balance. Seizing an opening, he unleashed a heavy wave of sharp ice spikes. The demon quickly covered herself in blessing flames, melting the spikes instantly. However, as Ryu's onslaught intensified, she was forced into a defensive position and summoned a thick stone wall. Ryu immediately changed tactics, firing high-pressure water jets that sliced through the stone like paper. Several hits landed, leaving the demon in shock. This human is actually hurting me, she thought. Dense smoke filled the air, blurring Ryu's vision and giving the demon a momentary reprieve. Seeing a perfect chance, she charged aggressively. She leaped forward in a diamond formation to deliver a finishing blow, but Ryu blocked it directly. The sound of their clashing blades echoed through the air. In that moment, Ryu's focus wavered for a second as he noticed her wounds were regenerating instantly. Taking advantage of that split second, the demon delivered a powerful blow that sent Ryu flying into a nearby building. As she moved in to finish him off, she felt small droplets of water on her skin. She looked up. A drop of rain hotter than boiling water fell onto her face, making her scream in pain. She immediately sealed herself inside a stone cocoon to wait out the searing rain. Meanwhile, Ryu slowly stood back up, calmly assessing the situation and preparing his next move. Moments later, the demon burst out of her cocoon with a violent blast of flames, sending debris flying. She walked slowly toward Ryu, her body radiating pure murderous intent. But then, the eclipse began to fade. As the first ray of sunlight hit her blade, the sword shattered into pieces. She stopped in her tracks, clicking her tongue in annoyance. I guess I'll have to leave it at that for now. I'll deal with you next time. Ryu mocked her, saying, yeah, just get out of here already. Surprisingly, the demon remained chill, casually introducing herself and asking for his name. Ryu gave a blunt, uninterested answer, making it clear he had zero interest in making friends with a demon. She found him interesting and was slightly amused that he knew she was a demon yet hadn't tried to kill her immediately. She warned him, one day we will have our rematch. Don't get yourself killed by some other demon before I return. When I come back, I'll be stronger and I won't hesitate to finish you. Cold shiver ran down Ryu's spine at her words. Suddenly, the eclipse ended completely and the city returned to normal as if nothing had happened. There wasn't a single physical trace left of their battle. Still feeling a bit shaken, Ryu decided to buy some books and then rest. He headed to the bank to cash in the coins he earned from the magic stones and received a substantial amount. Afterwards, he headed toward the dorms. He looked for his roommates, but they weren't there, so he started to head back. That's when he saw Mills and Doctor being cornered by a group of low-life adventurers. Mills was shouting at their leader, Dam, furious that they were being ambushed despite being injured. Dam laughed coldly and said, "Monsters won't show you mercy when you die in a dungeon, so why should I?" Suddenly, the small-time thugs standing with Dam began to collapse one by one. Ryu had quietly knocked them out from behind. Ryu calmly addressed Dam. "What you said is absolutely true. You should just try applying it to yourself sometime." He casually asked him, "So, do you have a plan to run or are you going to fight?" Enraged, Dam charged at Ryu. Ryu simply stepped aside and drove the hilt of his sword straight into Dam's stomach, causing the leader to cough up his breakfast on the spot. Ryu immediately turned to his injured friends. He checked on Doctor and Amon, giving them a light scolding. "You guys need to get stronger so weak losers like these can't corner you. But for now, everyone needs a break." The three of them headed to the public bathhouse. While soaking, Ryu used his magic to heal the wound on his chest left by Leonore's wind bullets. Sitting comfortably in the warm water, everyone's mood lightened. Mills and the others couldn't contain their curiosity and asked, "Hey, what kind of monster was strong enough to actually injure you?" Ryu considered mentioning the demon for a second, but decided that relaxing was more important right now. He kept the details to himself. A short time later, Mills and Amon and Doctor formed a team and began diving into the dungeon together. Amon took the front line, fighting goblins head-on, while the other two provided healing and support from the back. After a skirmish, Mills collected magic stones from the fallen goblins, while Doctor healed a wound on Amon's arm. "That last fight was too close," Mills noted. "He suggested we head back before things got worse." Amon agreed. Finding goblin archers on the 4th floor wasn't normal, and although Amon wanted to hunt more to earn extra money, Mills reminded him of Abel's advice: "There is no reward worth risking your life for." It turned out to be their best decision, as just a few floors below, another seasoned adventurer group was wiped out without warning by a massive beast. Back on the surface, Ryu was still obsessing over Leonore's magic. He took some comfort in knowing his casting speed held up against hers, but he realized he needed to build more strength and fix his weaknesses. His biggest flaw was speed. He couldn't even come close to her movements. Instead of moping about it, he wondered if he could use his own magic to bridge the gap. He came up with an idea. Why not use water jets to propel himself? He had tried this underwater before, but he was skeptical about it working on land. He created a small ice platform and attempted to push himself forward by generating hundreds of tiny water jets behind his back. The result? He moved only slightly faster than a grandmother. Ryu was irritated but muttered, "It's a work in progress." Later, he went to the library to research demons and alchemy. Coincidentally, Lynn, the ranking mage from Abel's party, was also there. She was scanning records to see if a spell actually exists that could create ice massive enough to crush golems. Finding nothing, she felt a smug sense of satisfaction, wanting to believe Ryu had lied. In her mind, only the strongest wizard on the continent could pull such a feat off. As she was returning a book to the shelf, she ran into Sarah, the elf girl. They exchanged a brief greeting and chatted for a bit before Sarah realized she had to meet her party and headed toward the guild. Meanwhile, Amon and the others returned safely from the dungeon. As soon as Mills sees Nina, he immediately goes into stuttering mode. Amon gives him a light smack on the head and steps forward to report the news. "We found goblin archers on the 5th floor. Normally, they aren't seen until below the 10th, so we came back to report it." Nina confirms the magic stones and rushes to inform the guildmaster, thanking the boys for bringing such vital information. The guildmaster realizes that finding goblins on the 5th floor is usually a grave sign. He suspects a monster outbreak is about to begin. He instructs Nina to summon every B-rank party and above currently in town. Nina informs him that only 2 high-ranking parties are available: Abel's Crimson Sword and Phillips's White Brigade. Abel is already irritated at the news, knowing he'll have to work alongside Phillips, the leader of the White Brigade, whom he absolutely can't stand. His teammates tell him to stop the drama and be professional. Abel takes a deep breath and enters the office. Phillips is already seated inside. Abel feels pure cringe just looking at him, but manages to keep his cool. The guildmaster explains the situation. The info on the goblin archers is solid. You two, the White Brigade and Crimson Sword, must head into the dungeon and check if a monster outbreak is starting. The last time this happened was 10 years ago. It feels early, but the possibility is real. The reward, 100 gold upfront and 200 gold upon completion. Abel asks, "Are we just investigating or are we fighting?" The master is firm. Only investigation. If the outbreak has already started, get out of there. We will seal the dungeon and call in the knights. The Lord and the knights' headquarters are already on alert. If this turns into a major outbreak, everyone needs to be ready. Both parties accept the mission. The next morning, Ryu wakes up even before Almond to prepare for his trip to the Northern Library. His roommates are just waking up as he explains, "I'm going to study alchemy at a more serious level today. I've heard the Northern Library has advanced level books." Doctor nods, confirming that D-rank adventurers and above have access. Amon mentions that he's heard forbidden books are kept there as well. A spark of curiosity lights up inside Ryu, but he knows he would need to be at least a B-rank adventurer to access those. They wish him luck as they head toward the dungeon. When Ryu arrives at the Northern Library, he immediately falls in love with the atmosphere. Looking at the shelves, he thinks to himself, "If I ask where the books on demons are, people will think I'm crazy." As he climbs the stairs to the first floor, his eyes land on someone unexpected, Sarah, the elf girl. He finds himself getting a little lost just looking at her. Meanwhile, at the dungeon gate, Abel and the two elite parties have arrived. Just as they are about to open the gates, Abel raises his hand to stop everyone. "Something feels off," he mutters. He asks Lynn to scan the first floor using her wind magic. Lynn focuses her concentration and suddenly looks horrified. Hundreds of monsters are swarming right behind the gate like a massive crowd. That confirmation is all they need. The outbreak has begun. The outbreak has officially begun. The guildmaster immediately orders everyone to fall back and sends word to the knights and the guild. At the guild, Mills and the others see a notice posted on the board. Dungeon sealed. They realize this is happening because of the report they filed about the 5th floor. Suddenly, a man bursts in screaming, "The monster outbreak has started! All adventurers to the walls!" Meanwhile, inside the library, Ryu and Sarah are locked in their own world as if the outside doesn't exist. Sarah breaks the silence with a smile. "Funny, isn't it? We keep running into each other." After a brief introduction, she asks if he's looking for something specific. Ryu almost mentions the demon, but quickly switches topics. "I want to study alchemy, specifically how to brew potions." Sarah is impressed. Making potions isn't exactly a beginner's task. It's hard to find a direct book on that, but I can show you the ones that will help you indirectly. I have the map of this library memorized. As they walk, they discuss books and the adventurer life. Sarah mentions she's a member of the D-rank party Wind and the only elf in the city. Ryu recalls someone saying only one elf lived here. Sarah adds, "Normally elves don't live with humans, but I'm a bit different." Back at the city's outer wall, the town's adventurers have gathered. It doesn't take long before the monsters smash through the heavy gates. The guildmaster roars, "Archers, mages, fire at will!" A full-scale war against the swarm begins. Minutes later, the knights arrive and start pushing the monsters back. For a moment, it seems the situation is under control, but the master's expression remains grim. The sheer number of monsters is far higher than the last outbreak. The battle drags on. Abel's party begins to run out of arrows. Mills arrives panting, carrying a barrel of fresh arrows along with a message. After the swarm is cleared, Abel and Phillips's parties are to handle the boss. Soon, the swarm monsters is mostly thinned out. The master gives the command, "Abel, Phillips, take the lead." Both parties jump from the wall, with Lynn using her wind magic to slow their descent. They hit the ground and cut through the remaining monsters toward the gate, waiting for the boss to emerge. A goblin general steps out. They think taking him down will end everything, but then 2 more goblin generals emerge behind him. Everyone realizes this isn't a normal fight. The true boss is a goblin king, and as long as these generals are alive, he will be even more dangerous. The plan is simple. Abel takes one general, Phillips takes the second, and Arya takes the third. The fight begins. Abel slices through his opponent's arms, but then he sees a massive shadow emerging from the gate. He yells, "Everyone, get down!" A second later, a massive wind-slash-wave erupts from the gate, cutting through the three generals as if they were made of paper. Everyone freezes. Such power and brutality. This wasn't a normal boss. Abel and Phillips realize that they are the only ones at a level high enough to fight this thing. They charge together, but their blades can't even scratch the king's armor. Without wasting time, Abel activates his king's skill. He dodges a counterattack, gets into close range, and strikes directly at the king's heart, but it's not a finishing blow. As the king moves to crush him, Abel vanishes. Finding an opening, he shouts to Lin, "Now, finish it!" Lin's wind spears pierce straight through the Goblin King, and he collapses. Everyone lets out a sigh of relief. It's over, so they think. Deep inside the dungeon, something else is still sleeping. By the time Ryu returns from the library, the guild is in full party mode. He has no idea what everyone is celebrating. People are singing and laughing while the poor guildmaster is buried under a mountain of paperwork, reports on the outbreak, payouts for adventurers, and preparing for the arrival of researchers from the royal capital. Abel's party has already told everyone what happened during the fight. Lin, however, had a question spinning in her mind for a while. She walks straight up to Ryu and bluntly asks, "Ryu, can you create an ice wall from a distance?" Ryu confirms it plainly. "Yeah, to be precise, I can cast from about 40 meters away. It took a while to get the right feel for it. It's not as easy as it looks." Lin is staggered. She has never heard of anyone casting effective magic from such a distance. She asks if it's a spell he created himself in what he calls it. Ryu smiles and says, "I'll show you later if you want. As for the name, I just say whatever comes to mind. You could do the same if you wanted." Just then, Mills interrupts. "Ryu, if you don't get to the table now, the plates will be empty." Ryu excuses himself and heads for the food line. Lin remains frozen in place, trying to process the logic, or lack thereof. Abel explains that for Ryu, incantations are just for style. In reality, he can cast magic without saying a word. This revelation blows Lin's mind even further. The next day, Dr. Mills and Amon are standing in front of the job board at the guild. However, the board is completely bare. Ryu asks what they're doing, since they'd normally be in the dungeon. They explain that after the outbreak, the dungeon was sealed for inspection, so they can't go inside for a few days. They're looking for resource gathering jobs to earn some money, but because so many items dropped during the outbreak, the demand for gathering jobs has plummeted. Ryu mentions he's looking for magic copper ore to start his alchemy. Amon remembers that magic copper ore is incredibly expensive. Ryu nodded. Yeah, one shop wanted 50 gold for a small piece. Ryu didn't have to worry about money since he was already well loaded, but he wanted to help his friend. He asks simply, "Would you guys be interested in gathering some magic copper ore for me?" Ryu offers them 4 gold coins each just for the effort, whether they find the ore or not. If they return with any, he promises to buy them from them for 25 gold per piece. The three of them are wide-eyed. They have never seen that kind of money in their lives. Doctor asks, "Ryu, are you sure you're okay paying that much?" Ryu explains the math. "If you bring me the ore, it costs me only 37 gold total, which is much cheaper than the 50 gold price tag in town. It's a great deal for me." The logic is sound, and the three of them realize Ryu isn't joking. Overjoyed, they head out immediately to find the ore. After they leave, Ryu hears a commotion outside. He goes down to investigate, finds Dam arguing with several knights. The knights are attempting to kidnap a girl in the middle of the market, and she is clearly resisting. They grab her arm and begin to drag her away. Dam steps forward and shoves one of the knights, freeing the girl from their grip. But the situation quickly escalated. There are 4 knights, all armed with swords, and Dam is alone. There is no way Dam can win this fight. The leader of the group steps forward to teach Dam a lesson, but as soon as he takes a step, thud, he trips and slams face first into the ground. The crowd was baffled. Dam wasn't holding anything. How did the knight fall? The knight couldn't handle the embarrassment and immediately blamed Dam, claiming he must have done something. But when the knight tried to stand up again, he tripped and slammed into the ground once more. Shortly after, Phillips arrived, his face twisted with with literal disgust at the knight's behavior. The knights initially tried to pull rank on him, as knights generally hold a higher status than adventurers in the city. However, Phillips didn't flinch. He wasn't just any adventurer. His full name was Phillips de Nolin. The moment the knights heard that name, they realized they had made a grave mistake. Phillips's father, Alexis de Nolin, was the former captain of the Royal Knights, and the Nolin family still held massive influence over the knightly order. Phillips laid into them, "You have brought shame to the title of knighthood. Get out of my sight right now, or you'll find yourselves unemployed by tomorrow. Understood?" The knights scrambled and fled in a panic. Phillips looked toward Ryu. He already knew that the tripping incidents were caused by Ryu's magic. Abel had told him before that Ryu's magic was abnormal, but Phillips had never seen such precise magic cast from such a distance with his own eyes. He appreciated Ryu's help, but decided not to mention it to anyone. Reporting that Ryu had taken down royal knights would only bring unnecessary trouble for him. He felt a deep sense of shame that people of his rank were behaving so poorly. That night, while Ryu was eating, Abel approached him alone, which was unusual since his party was always with him. Ryu immediately teased him. "Out alone tonight? Heading to the pleasure district, are we?" Abel panicked. "Shut up, people will hear you." Ryu deduced that Abel must have a crush on someone. At first, he thought it might be Lin, but then he quickly dismissed that. "Wait, is it Arya?" Abel's instant panic basically confirmed it. Then Ryu got serious. "Alright, what's the real reason you're out alone?" Abel explained that he was heading to the pleasure district because some corrupt knights were planning to harm someone. A dungeon investigator had arrived in Lone, an old friend of the guildmasters, and the crown had assigned knights to protect him. However, those very knights were behaving like criminals. Abel knew there was a 100% chance of trouble, and he thought Reeve's help could be useful. As they walked, Ryu spotted two adventurers talking in hushed tones. Having met almost every adventurer in town, Ryu noted that these two looked new. Abel remarks that many people come to try the dungeon, but since it's sealed, why would they be here? These men were dressed in black and vanished the moment Ryu and Abel spotted them. Anticipating an ambush, Ryu and Abel purposely walked through a dark alley. As expected, the shady adventurers attacked. In an instant, Ryu summoned ice directly over their heads, knocking them out effortlessly. It was an easy fight, and they decided to hand the attackers over to the guards for interrogation. Meanwhile, in the pleasure district, Phillips was walking alone as several royal knights secretly prepared to ambush him from behind. But the moment they drew their swords, their entire bodies locked up. They couldn't move a muscle. Phillips's trap had worked perfectly. "I see now how low you've fallen," he said coldly. "You don't even deserve to live." He had coordinated with a girl named Shauna to hit them with paralytic needles. Now that they were frozen, Phillips shouted, "Shauna, finish them." Shauna used her fire magic to incinerate the knights instantly. The next morning, a research team arrived from the capital, and predictably, the drama started immediately. A researcher named Clive seized the entire town's food supply for his investigation. He then demanded that the dungeon be reopened and that adventurers be provided to protect his team. The guildmaster refused, stating that the conditions inside were unknown and extremely dangerous. However, Clive produced an official royal mandate with full authority. The master had no choice to comply.